Wouldn't this just be a non-detrimental trigger that was missed and you do nothing for it because
So it was
there-
not a
there-
trigger because what happened is what the trigger says is that your opponent discards a card and you untap your lands. Those are
Right.
both the same in the same trigger, and part of it happened and part didn't. So it's actually not if he had not done either of those things, then it is a mistrigger. But because one of those things happened, it's not going to be a mistrigger.
So, I mean, I don't see how you could back up because the problem is it was supposed to untap his lands, which then means he could have responded to whatever spell that Norm cast at the time. And so it would really change a lot of the game state to back up.
Just why I say it depends on what spell was cast.
Yeah, it definitely depends on what spell it is.
So if there was no spell cast, regardless of what spell that was, if there was no spell cast, I think it's a lot easier to say, yeah, this is a backup. And I would agree that it does depend on what spell is cast, as far as whether you would or not. I had spent about 10 minutes, I guess, talking with Steven on this one, and he was pretty advocate about the fact that you would never back this one up. Which I'm not 100% sure that's the same call I'd make, because I would kind of want to know which was cast as well. Sorry, yeah. Okay.
So I recently read the IPG, and on this particular case, I wouldn't back up. However, I would definitely call point to an investigation. Like there's an example right in a sporting conduct cheating of a player notices that his opponent resolved only half the trigger ability of sort of examine and decides to not call attention to the error. That's a great example of sporting conduct cheating.
Right.
Yeah. So that specific example that you're showing is pretty much.
You told me
it's a
about
great
that.
point to do an investigation on why they didn't call it.
I assume we're treating. I assume we're treating these scenarios like.
Right, I did need that disclaimer first of we're going to assume that, of course, anytime you have these kind of errors, you are going to want to those cheating involved. You're going to have that discretion. So we're going to assume that there was no cheating for these, or the whole backup.
But one real important point on this particular scenario is that cheating requires the player to do something they know they are not supposed to do. If the player misunderstood the mistrigger policy and thought they were allowed, intentionally didn't remind their opponent not to tap the land because they thought that was the thing they were allowed to do, that isn't cheating. Even though doing it, while they know they weren't allowed to do it, is cheating, because they misunderstood the mistrigger policy and were very open and honest that I noticed, I did my part, I didn't think I had to remind him to do his. That is not cheating. It is for cheating.
Cheating requires intent.
If you decide not to back up, you're not going to tap the because
Cheating actually specifically requires.
This specific example is part of my change.
So the question is, why can't we just, if we decide not to back up, just untap those lands? And the answer is because we have this list of partial fixes that we can take, and untapping is not one of them. The partial fixes, they missed it the other way, which I forget, I think you mentioned it, one of you guys.
It was between the two.
Okay, mentioned that if it was the other way where they forgot to discard but did untap, that is a partial fix you're going to have to do. You're going to have to discard now. So in the interest of time, we're going to skip. Oh, this one's kind of fun. So we've got a duress cast on dead. The duress gets a primeval titan into the graveyard, which is where the error is because you can't get the creature. The primeval titan is then reanimated. Library is searched for 2 lands. There's a concordant crossroads in place so that it has haste. It attacks, searches for 2 lands, and then the player realizes you could not have duressed that. So, this one is a fun one, but I'm going to fast track the discussion because I want to get to the last one. Where the answer here is going to be that you are obviously not backing up because there's an event that's going to have happened here. And there is nothing in the wrong zone, and so there's actually going to be no room D for this one. They're going to leave the game state as it is. From that reaction, I think there are a couple that disagree with me, so we can talk about it later afterwards. But So this one is just that we've had a goblin arsonist that attacks, is not blocked, and they play a storm blood berserker without putting counters on it. So they don't do the bloodthirst counter for that. In the next attack phase, they decide to block and realize, wait a second, they should have had 2 counters on it. So you are not going to back up. Is it a mistrigger?
No.
Why is it not a mistrigger?
Not a replacement.
Even though Bloodthirst does say their reminder text looks an awful lot like a trigger, because it begins with if, it's actually a replacement effect, which is a good thing to know. So this actually happened at a yeah, I guess you were there. This actually happened at a was it some IQ super something. Underworld Cerebus was in play. It died, and its text reads: when it dies, you exile it. You return all creature cards from each player's graveyard to their hand. Well, the players return all cards from the graveyard into play. And I don't remember exactly what they were, but when I walked over to the board, it looked something like this. All the lands came from the big one. So there were a whole lot of into the battle triggers. There were scries, there were draws, there were all sorts of things. And I don't think there's any question here as to whether or not you're backing this up, because you're not. But you do have a significant number of cards that are in the wrong zone. Do you apply that partial fix?
How confident are both players in exactly what cards?
If the players can 100% tell you these are the 27 creatures that just came from the graveyard,
They already resolved triggers for
they
all these
resolved all the
creatures?
beneficial triggers.
I'm never heard anything from any zone. This is way too much.
Good fight.
Good luck, you two idiots. You just screwed somebody powerfully.
The players deserve each other.
So,
Yes, legally married. Oh, if it doesn't, I did this to you. Well, the first thing you do is
so the interesting part about this is, my thought is you're never going to back this up ever, because so much has happened. You're never going to even do the partial fix, because it seems like it would disrupt a lot of the game going on, etc. That's what I thought 100% certainty this morning. And then as I was driving down here, I was messaging Steven back and forth. And for a little while, we managed to. Yes, no, I was in the passenger. So Steven Zwinger managed to convince me that he would actually return the cards to the correct zone, which I'm still not sure I agree with, but was a really interesting one. I talked to Jeremy this morning, and Jeremy's thought was, if you can 100% identify every single card, then you might be able to do the partial fix. If there's even a possible question on one of those cards, there's no way you do any partial fix here. But the fact of this is a situation that actually happened and kind of blew my mind when I walked over to the table. Yes.
So you already searched with Primeval Titan and tried with this Temple of Valor.
There's no back.
And Oracle.
Every one of those cards is
At that point,
every
isn't
one of those
moving
moving the creatures to the graveyard just as horrible a solution as letting these two morons finish their game? You're way too late to fix this. Their libraries are out of order. They've got extra lands on the battlefield.
Yes. You walk up to the table, you say that, and you leave, and that's how you do it. So with that in mind, we're now done with this section. We're out of time, so thanks for joining our backups and GRVs.